everybody. This is Brady Henderson from the historic First Baptist Church of Gaston, located in the Midlands of South Carolina, and you're listening to the 101st episode of the Menorah Podcast, a podcast that seeks to share the light, speak the light, and send the light of Jesus Christ all across the airways of the internet. I'm your host, Brady Henderson, also here with Alan Ott, our co-host. Al, you doing okay today?
Doing good today.
So today is Thursday, February the 19th, and so we got through Valentine's Day. That was a great time, of course, at the Valentine's Banquet with Dr. Doug Mize and Dan Williams doing our music and our great food. Want to thank everybody for coming to that, and we told you last week, we kind of left you on a cliffhanger. Didn't know if we were going to continue or not. We've decided to continue our series with Hannah Henderson, the First Lady of the First Baptist Church of Gaston. Hannah, thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So kind of want to put the ball in your court a little bit and let you open up some things as far as advice when it comes to not just picking somebody to date, but picking a spouse. Things that you look for, things that you need to stay away from. Obviously, the most important that we've talked about before, but is so important, is marrying a believer. And not just a believer, but a strong believer. Someone who is active in their faith, I think, is the verbiage that I would use to describe that. So some, banner points or some themes that you would look at as far as a spouse goes. Not necessarily me. I'm just talking as advice for some of our younger listeners.
Well, I think, for me, one thing that I have reflected on after being married is that I prepared more for the wedding than I did our actual marriage. And so I feel like it's really important to
That'll preach right there.
Think more about, your life after the wedding. And I feel like I was all consumed, which as a girl, that's to be expected. A lot of girls, women, you dream about your wedding day. You dream about the dress you're going to wear, all the little details, the flowers, all the things. And so I feel like I was all consumed with the wedding and not as much about our marriage. And so if I could do anything over, I feel like I would really focus in more on our relationship. I think one thing, it is important picking a good spouse, but I also think that premarital counseling was huge for us. So we met with Pastor Larry, who was the pastor that married us, and we went through a workbook. And we honestly just went through everything from finances to holidays to everything in between, our childhood, how that affect how we respond to things and all that kind of stuff. And so it was really, really helpful to have somebody like Pastor Larry, who had been married for quite some time and who had good advice and who was willing to counsel us and give us the best setup for marriage. But, it's one of those things you can't really prepare. You can only do so much to prepare, but I feel like I could have prepared better. We did have the premarital counseling, and we had lots of good advice, but that's one thing I really wish that I would have done a little bit better. So definitely recommend pre-marriage counseling. That is the best thing you can ever do, because it's honestly the hard things that you might not ask your spouse if you're not with somebody that would have good advice to give you in that moment, if that makes sense.
It does, and I would add to that, the more intense the premarital counseling, the better off. Don't just do premarital counseling with somebody who's gonna make you feel good until you got it all together. Like you really need somebody kind of tough, and willing to get in there. So let's talk about marriage years. We talked about the first year of marriage several weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I want to talk about year 2 and 3, and just kind of, maybe you can talk a little bit about 2, maybe I can talk about 3. It doesn't matter, just kind of how things have changed. Obviously, career changes. A dog entered the picture, and talking a little bit about that, and then hopefully children one day. So just talk a little bit about years 2 to 3, and then I'll add a little bit.
Yeah, so one thing that I was really reflecting on was, the first year of marriage, I saw everything in the home as something we had to split 50-50 as far as like chores and things. Like Brady needed to do this amount and I needed to do this amount, and that was how marriage was. It was a 50-50, like he needed to do the dishwasher and all toilets and all these things. And so like in my head, I had a 50-50 list, and I would check off if he was doing the things that he was supposed to be doing or not. And it led to a lot of resentment in my heart. Like, he is not doing the things. Maybe I didn't express to you these things, probably. But anyways, I don't know where I went. And I was talking to this lady, and she said, see everything that you do, whether it be in the home, out of the home, whatever you do, see it as serving your spouse and see it as being a servant and see it as trying to outserve your spouse. And I've kept that with me ever since that moment when she said that, because I was like, you know what, it is. So no matter if I'm doing 75% and Brady's doing 25, or whether he's doing 80% and I'm doing the other 20, it doesn't matter. See it as serving and trying to outserve your spouse.
That's a very good point. And I would add to that as well is you have to give each other some leeway as to the definition of things.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I've wrestled with all of my life is I'm going to do something. I'm just not going to do it right now. And when the cabinet door won't shut because the trash cans piled up, pouring out on that might be a time to reevaluate that. But kind of understand, and again, that goes back to communication. Hey, I want you to do this. This is what I expect. And that sounds really harsh to say that's your expectation. But deep down in your heart, it really is.
It is,
and it's okay to expect things of the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with.
Right.
You expect him to be kind to you, to take care of you. And so that's one of those things that it's kind of it's not, I wouldn't say a negotiation, but it's something where you have the understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, communication is definitely top in that category as far as just making sure your other spouse knows what you need from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think you make a lot of good points. And I think one of the things that was tough was when we got married is that, I didn't know that you, you were keeping up with what I was and wasn't doing and things like that. And obviously we figured it out and we've kind of got something that works for us. And I think a lot of it, you can't, I hear all the time, and I'm going to sound bad when I say this, but you hear all the time, like, this in the 1950s, men need to do as much, if not more, than women and things like that. And then on the flip side of that, you hear people say, well, yada, yada, yada. There's all kind of different things when it comes to house chores and what people have like models in their mind of what it's supposed to look like. And I really think that it boils down to the personality of the marriage, the personality of the spouses. For example, this works for us. You don't have to do it. If what I'm getting ready to describe is flip-flopped in your marriage, you do what works for you. But Hannah is more OCD. She loves to clean. I don't even know if loves is the word, like has to in her mind in order for the world not to crash. And so obviously, even if I do clean certain things, it's not going to be up to that standard because I am not obsessed with it. You can go in my office here at the church and tell that very quickly. And so, but what I am obsessed with is I do like things to look good outside. So I like the grass cut. I like it edged. I like it a certain color. I like, all that kind of stuff. And so I focus more on that, and she focuses more on the inside functions. Now, I usually do toilets. I also bathe Beamer, which is a big time thing, so that helps us out. It usually takes an hour and a half to bathe him and dry him and all that good stuff, and spray him and then brush him and everything like that. And so we learned, it wasn't overnight, but we learned through the years, feel like we're in, I don't want to say a sweet spot, but it feels like a sweet spot where things kind of go well. And I do want to talk about something in our marriage. We talked a little bit on last week's episode about you feeling a little prideful as far as the teaching and all that kind of stuff. Not prideful, but swallow your pride was the verbiage that was used. And so I want to talk about a situation where I had to do that and kind of get your intake. So we get married and everything, and I graduated from Anderson with a business degree. So we had talked about it in premarital counseling. We had talked about it the entire time leading up to when we get married that I was going to handle the finances. And that was going to be what I was going to do because I was the breadwinner and that's just what I was going to do. And I'm trying to think about when I finally came to you. Was it 2 years or?
It was about a year. It was right after, it's probably a year and a half ago. So about halfway through where we are now.
So at year 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after 2 years, I go to you and I say, hey, I'm not very good at this. My dad has always been good with money. My mom has always been good with money. My grandpa, not necessarily. So maybe that's where I got it from. But my dad's dad certainly was, even taught financial classes at Limestone. So, automatically I'm thinking I got this. And I just realized that I was kind of in over my head, and that wasn't really something I was too good at. And so that was kind of a moment for me where I had to come to you, and obviously you've done a great job with it since taking over. And I just think that's an example of sometimes you have to change things, even if you had that idea for a long time. I mean, that's a simple concept, but it's okay to not be good at something. And I want to say that. Like, that's part of loving your spouse and letting your spouse shine is what you might not be good at. Odds are God and his sovereignty and bringing you two together, they probably are good at it.
Yeah.
And I never realized how bad I was at it until I saw her do it. And I'm like, now I don't even want to talk about it because it starts hurting my head. So she just kind of handles it. And I mean, just kind of talk a little bit about that and how we came to that.
Yeah. Well, that was also during the job transition. And so I went from being overloaded and overworked to now having a normal schedule. And so I did feel like I had a little bit more time to dedicate to that. And I will shout out the budgeting app that we use because it has helped us in so many ways. But we use the Every Dollar budgeting app. And so it's awesome. It takes everything from your bank account and it puts it in there, and then you put it in what category, and then it updates based off what you put in it. And so you're able to see month to month where you spend in each category. So it's so helpful for us, and for me it's just an easy tool to be able to add up what we spend every month and to be able to budget correctly. And so yeah, it's been fun. I enjoy it. It's not something I thought I would enjoy, but I do. So I'm thankful that it worked out that way because I enjoy it. So.
Well, it's very hard to talk to somebody about your failures. And it's very hard generally for people to ask for help. But generally speaking, it's very easy to get help from your spouse just by saying, hey, look, I am in over my head.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I've run up against this way. And what do you think? And those are the things that you develop 10, 20, 30 years down the line. And when I love to cook, I like to do that kind of stuff. And so I enjoy having the time to fix food. But I'm just OCD enough that I don't like to work in a messy area. So when I present my plate on the table, pretty much the only thing that's dirty is the plates and the forks and the spoons.
I love that.
Now, Sherelle, she's a little different in that she will use everything in the kitchen and pile it all in the sink, clean it all at one time. I cook a whole meal in a pot.
There you go.
And just reuse it. And, because in my mind, I'm putting things in order. Okay, this is going to take the longest. So get everything done first and then do this last. So you'll find that as your marriage develops, you will hit those sweet spots, and they're almost a aha moment.
Well, anything else that you want to cover that we haven't mentioned already?
Well, let me ask you a prompting question.
Okay, I'm trying to look up some questions.
In terms of communications, how does each of you respond to communications? When you hear the other one say something, how do you know that this person is, this is not a big deal? The trash needs taken out. Okay, does that mean it's piled up in the corner and you can't even see the trash can, or does that just mean you need to tie the sack up?
I would say I would answer that with tone. I can hear her voice and interpret. If I can't see her, I can hear her and know. If I can see her, then I can read body language very, very well. So I can, and a lot of that comes with pastoring for a long time. I say a long time, but it's a long time relative to my lifetime. Even when you're preaching and you hit a chord, body language, you're in meetings, body language. So, body language is my number one way of reading her. If I can't do that, tone, and then sometimes the two intertwine. That
Yeah.
would be my answer.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same, just learning each other's communication style and, being able to read each other well. I feel like that comes with time spent with one another.
Yeah, I think that's a really fluid thing too, because communication is, some people are natural born communicators. Some people are not natural communicators, but they're learned communicators, and then some people are not good at communicating. Period.
Yeah.
And usually
That's
the
true.
three different ones tend to marry each other. And so the gifted communicators might get really frustrated with the other two. And then the other two might get frustrated with the gifted communicator because it just flows for them, the gifted communicator, but it doesn't flow for the non gifted communicator.
Yeah.
So that can be tough. And then the gifted communicators think that everybody's just supposed to get it because they're a good communicator when that's not always the case either. So that's tough.
Yeah. All right. This flows into something else I was thinking about: daily habits, cleanliness, routines, social media use. Are they all compatible? That's something, that we had to adjust. You mentioned earlier getting a dog. Brady was notorious for not for missing the hamper, the clothes hamper. But once we got Beamer, man, it was over because Beamer would get your clothes.
Would eat everything.
so pros of getting a dog
And
was
he'll still try. Like,
they'll still get in our hamper, but most of the time, hey, I was like, that's a huge pro of getting a dog is that now the clothes are always in the hamper.
well, I mean, you mentioned the dog. I mean, I was anti-dog. I thought that's where you were going with that.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then,
we
and then
can't
you
talk
switched to
about that.
anti-hamper. I was like, wow, curveball. I struck
Sorry.
out on that. But you
You do it now.
you mentioned anti. I didn't like dogs. You remember that, Al? I didn't want
Yeah.
to be around dogs, and then you wanted a dog for
Really
the
bad.
first however many months of our marriage, and then right before our 1 year anniversary
Yeah.
is when we got Beamer. So we hadn't even been
Yeah.
together a year yet. I
Mm-mm.
didn't realize that because we got him in 23.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so anyway, come home with this creature. First few nights were rough. As far as timing is really important when you make big decisions for everybody that's listening. And the week we got Beamer was Vacation Bible School.
Yeah. Not great timing on our part.
One of the, if not the busiest week of the year, and we got Beamer, so no sleep all week.
Yep.
He cried, and after 3 days, I go to Hannah and say, and this is an interesting part. We can talk about it if you want to, but how the husband needs to be the leader of the house, and wife being submissive and all that. So I go to you as the leader of the house and say, don't think we can do this anymore. I'm going to give it a few more days, but it might be time for us to look at options to get rid of him.
I know. I was so sad. I was like, oh, why can't they just get along? I remember when we went to pick him up, and I held him underneath my arm. He was a little 5-pound little nugget. And I look over at Brady. I'm like, do you want to hold him? And Brady's like, no. And I was like, oh no, this might be a bad decision.
And now look at us.
Y'all are inseparable
Yeah,
now.
now
Like, oh my goodness.
we don't really spend a lot of time apart. I got to the office early this morning, and he wasn't with me today. And I just couldn't wait till y'all came so we could go to lunch and so I could see my
Aw.
boy. I was like, I miss my boy. Where's he at? Yeah, I mean, so that was an interesting part, and that's the other thing. I think serving your spouse and being able to change. Two things I think about: change and sacrifice.
Yeah.
There are certain things you have to sacrifice, and there are certain things you have to change. No matter how good you were, or people told you were in high school or college, or your friends, like there are still times you have to be adaptable in marriage. You can't just be a one size fits all. They make hats nowadays that are one size fits all, and they don't do it like they used to as far as being fitted. And even the one size fits all don't really fit that well. So you have to change and be able to morph and stuff. And so I kind of thought that was interesting.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I mean, you didn't really want a dog for the longest time, and you adapted, and look at what a blessing it's been.
Sometimes the things that we resist the most help us the most.
Yep, I agree.
That's good.
We got anything else? All right. Well, thank you, Hannah. Appreciate that. Alan, thank you for your chiming in. And so we're going to go ahead and wrap up on the 101st episode of the Menorah Podcast, the podcast that seeks to share the light, speak the light, and send the light of Jesus Christ all across the airwaves of the internet. We are going to be back next week, episode 102. We're excited about that, February the 26th. Make sure you tune in. Hannah and I are going to talk about how we handle conflict and also spiritual disciplines. And so hopefully you will tune into that and listen in. You've been listening to the Menorah Podcast, a ministry of the First Baptist Church of Gaston. Have a great Thursday. Lord willing, we'll see you Sunday.